friends, to our 18 dissertation dish. Thank you all for making the time. My name is Claire McCann, and I will be your moderator today. I'm currently serving as chair-elect of the Graduate Student Network of ISLICE, or the International Association for Research and Service Learning Community Engagement. And it is my honor today to moderate this webinar. I am especially pleased to be in conversation with our speaker, Dr. Shilohna Phillanders, who has contributed a critical, generative, and rigorous study to our field in the form of her dissertation. And I'm also honored because I have learned a lot through my conversations with Dr. Phillanders, and so it is great to have the opportunity to moderate this space too. But before I hand over, I want to take a moment to provide some background on this webinar series for those who are maybe joining for the first time today. This is the Dissertation Dish, which is a collaboration between ISLICE, Lead California, and GivePulse. Dissertation Dish presentations are meant for all audiences, from seasoned scholars in the field of service learning community engagement to practitioners, to graduate students, and especially those who are looking to learn from people who have recently followed the paths that they are currently journeying. So these presentations serve to highlight some of the most recent research in the community engagement field, create a way for journal editors and conference organizers to be exposed to new researchers, and to offer some support and guidance for those who are in graduate programs by ways of tips from those who have just gone through the experience. So far, we have hosted 17 of these webinars, and we're excited for you to join us today for our 18th as we feature the dissertation of Dr. Shilohna Phillanders, an educator, practitioner-scholar, and educational consultant, whose work centers on service learning, critical pedagogy, and socially responsive community engagement. She is going to introduce us to the idea of autoethnography, a reflexive research methodology developed through her doctoral study in service learning and community engagement. Emerging at the intersection of critical pedagogy and narrative inquiry, Echo-Autoethnography expands traditional autoethnography by positioning the researcher self not as a solitary source of meaning, but as a site reverberating with the echoes of community voices, collective memory, and the ethical tensions of engaged scholarship. Developed through Dr. Phillanders' experience as a Caribbean practitioner-scholar navigating transnational academic terrains, this method captures the layered interplay of power, place, and positionality in shaping educational research. It provides space to interrogate complicity, agency, and transformation, offering a justice-oriented alternative to extractive research practice and affirming reflexivity as essential to our pedagogical work. We are particularly pleased today to feature Dr. Shilohna Phillanders at this webinar, as she is the recipient of the prestigious ISLICE Dissertation Award this year. A huge congratulations, Dr. Phillanders. I'm going to hand over to her now, but just want to highlight that after the presentation, I will facilitate a Q&A. So if you have any questions or comments, please keep these going in the chat space, and we'll have a dedicated space after the presentation. And for those of you who can stick with us past the first hour, we hope that you'll join in an informal conversation with Dr. Phillanders for an additional 30 minutes. We also have just a few logistical items before we begin. So firstly, kindly keep yourself muted during the presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, again, feel free to post them in the chat. We will be keeping track of the questions for our Q&A session a little bit later. And during the Q&A session, we will review those questions. And very lastly, a reminder, as you may have noticed as you joined, that we are recording this presentation, and it will be available within a few days on Lead California's YouTube channel. We will send a link, of course, as soon as it is available. So I think that is enough for me, and I am delighted to hand over to Dr. Shilohna Phillanders, who will be presenting today.
Thank you so much, Claire. Thank you to everyone who is present here today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. I know we have an international group of persons here. So just recognizing wherever you are in the world, I am wishing you a good whatever period of time it is right now. It is really my pleasure to be here and to participate in this iteration of ISLI's Lead California and Give Pulse's 18th dissertation dish presentation. So thank you so very much to the team for hosting me, and also to ISLI's, which I have been an active member of, participant of for the last few years, and thankful for the recognition of my research. It definitely was not something that I expected, but I really do appreciate knowing that the work that I have put in the field of service learning and community engagement over all the years, which culminated in my dissertation, is really appreciated in the arena of work that we do. We know that community engaged work is something that goes beyond just our small pockets of the work that we do, but it transcends global spaces, cultural spaces, geopolitical spaces. So knowing that this work that I have done has transcended just even my own space, but has gotten to a point where it's recognized globally, I am very much appreciative of that. So I am going to share my screen now with you all, and let's get into today's presentation. Okay. Just to clarify, can you all see my screen? Yes, thumbs up if we can see it. Can we see it? I hope so.
Yes, you're good to go.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Tiff. Okay, so my presentation for today is entitled Echoes Between Us, Introducing Echo-Autoethnography as a Reflexive Method for Critical Pedagogy and Community Engagement. Yes, it is a mouthful. I think this was one of the contentions with even my dissertation itself. There was a lot of back and forth between my committee, myself, my advisor on the title, capturing what is echo-autoethnography, what is the presence of echoes in research, what am I doing in terms of community engagement. So yes, it's a bit of a mouthful, but I hope by the end of my presentation today that you would all have a better understanding of the different components that make up this title and my research in general. So before I even dive into the research itself, I think one of the most crucial parts of my work is the recognition and understanding of positionality. Positionality as a researcher is crucial as it identifies who you are, where you're from, and why your work should and does resonate in your own space as well as external spaces. Your positionality as a researcher identifies you as having a voice that is relevant to the work that you do. So my positionality, as would have been mentioned, I am Dr. Shilohna Phillanders. I graduated with my PhD in International Comparative Education from Beijing Normal University in 2024, which was last year. So it's been a year since I've been holding this title of a PhD, and it's been quite a year, quite a journey. And I think that in itself is the tale of what it means to be a researcher in the field of work that we do. It's a very niche field. Community engagement is niche. I have often had to pause and give as simplified as possible understanding of what is community engagement, what is service learning, what does that mean, why is it important? So yes, my positionality is important because I am a researcher in the field of community engagement and service learning. I'm an international educator. I taught at primary and tertiary level in China. I am a researcher. I am a practitioner in the field of service learning and community engagement, which means I get my hands dirty and I am in with the community. I go out and I participate with the people. I don't just engage and speak to the community, but I engage with the community. My career has long been established in community engaged work. Since my time in high school, I've been heavily involved in the community. I see the work that I do as a connection of stories. My work is a connection of my story to my wider story of being a national of Trinidad and Tobago, of being a national of the Caribbean, a Caribbean citizen, which I'm very proud of, my Trinidad and Tobago identity, which I'm very proud of, my understanding of myself as an advocate in the community, as a woman of color, as someone who seeks adventure and understanding and who's curious. So all these things shape who I am and shape the positionality in which I take on my research. So storytelling through autoethnography. So my research started off as a tale, a story. It was me trying to tell the story and to understand the story of my work as a practitioner in the field of community engagement and service learning. I worked at an institution, a higher educational institution in Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean for approximately 8 years, where I coordinated community engagement and service learning activities. So when I stepped into the world of PhD research, I knew I wanted to look at what it meant to be a practitioner of service learning and community engagement in a Caribbean context, in a context as an emerging society. I try to stay away from dividing terms such as global north and global south, developing, underdeveloped, developed. I try to stay away from those terms. So I would say an emerging society, a society where service learning and community engagement has been happening, but not in the formal stages that it is seen within settings such as the US, where community engagement and service learning as a theory, as a pedagogical approach would have started. So for my research, I wanted to tell my story. I wanted to share what it was to be a researcher in the field in my setting. I wanted to understand what that was in comparison to other settings, other global settings, and I wanted to just shine a light on my culture and the depth of what my experiences would have been like. And autoethnography was the means that allowed me to do that. Within my research setting, within my institution, autoethnography wasn't really a research method that would have gotten a lot of attention. I think in the Chinese education system, as well as in many Caribbean education systems, autoethnography is not really looked upon as a widely used form of research. It is one that, in general, autoethnography is seen as one that can be indulgent. It can be not taken very seriously. It is one that is like, oh, you're just sharing your own recollection of events. How is that research? But I hope that my presentation will give a better understanding of the validity of autoethnography and how echo-autoethnography has its place in strengthening the research that we do as community practitioners. So what happens when you share your personal story in research? It's the utilization of your own experiences to understand a phenomenon in society. So it's not just about recalling and journaling and writing what you did and why you did and how you did, but rather it's utilizing your own story to look at something that's occurring within the society and an issue that you think needs to be addressed, and presenting through rigorous research how this particular issue can be addressed. So it's the use of self-reflection and writing to explore your lived experience. For my research, I would have utilized journal entries, conversations through social media with the different persons in my life, friends, family, co-workers, other practitioners. I would have utilized vignettes or poems. I would have utilized different reflective practices that all came together to shape my story, but then also it would have been done through a critical, reflective lens that would lead to that very rigorous academic aspect of research. So in autoethnography, one of the things that stands out, and one of the reasons why I decided to choose that as my research method, is that it gives a voice to an other in research. So as I said, my positionality is very important. I am an other, quote unquote, because I am a woman in research. I am a Black Caribbean woman in research. I did my research in China, where I was a minority for the first time in my life, coming from a Caribbean setting where Black and brown faces are the majority. So I am an other in terms of my voice, a woman, a Caribbean woman. I am an other in terms of my, I would say, youth in the field of the research. I am an other in the sense that community engagement and service learning is a very niche form of pedagogy. It's one that's growing and building, but it is relatively niche, with a lot of persons in the field of academia not understanding the different areas and spaces that culminate service learning and community engagement. So autoethnography was chosen because it was my deliberate attempt to move away from colonial research values and methods, my attempt to utilize a voice from a post-colonial setting to look at a problem and a space that is shaped in a global, powerful setting. So the US setting is the one where community engagement and service learning stems from. It is a space that is seen as a global powerhouse. And I wanted to look at this thing of community engagement and service learning and being a practitioner from an emerging space and what that looks like. So it was a whole culmination of utilizing my positionality as an other to provide a platform to share my experience. Autoethnography challenges social norms. So one of the key aspects of service learning and community engagement is reflection, self-reflection. So when we get our students involved in work within the community as practitioners, we are well aware that one of the main things that we need to do is ensure that there is reflection in the work that they do. When they go into the communities, when they engage with different elements, when they go out and do their work, be it a beach cleanup, a homework center, working with the youth in a community, in a marginalized community, or raising funds to do whatever it is they're doing, one of the key aspects is self-reflection. However, in looking at my work, my research, I felt that there's a particular need to look at the self-reflection of the practitioner themselves, the practitioner being, whether it's a faculty member, an administrative personnel, or anyone who is a part of the university, college, institution that organizes and shapes the work that students are involved with in the community. Very often, as practitioners, we are not given the time and the space to reflect. And when we do reflect, we realize as the ones in charge of these programming that it is a very humbling process and experience. It is essential for us to know why we think what we think, why we say what we do, and why we shape our programming the way that we do. This allows us to be better practitioners, better versions of ourselves, and in turn, allow for a greater development of the students in their own space as they transition through life at tertiary level education. So critical pedagogy is where we use that reflexivity and connect it to education so that there is a self-awareness and self-determination. It is education that allows people to grow beyond the academic knowledge, the scholarly knowledge, but also that holistic development of who they are. So it's utilizing that reflexivity, that self-reflection, to tie into how can we make ourselves and our students recognize themselves in the society, within the communities that they're working with, and for them to be on a path of self-determination where they understand their space and their place in society and how they can help shape and connect what they're doing in their academic settings to the improvement of life outside of that. So all of this comes down to understanding voices and echoes in engaged research. So this is where my own study, my own research came into play that led to Echo-Autoethnography. So it was an understanding of the critical reflexivity of the work in service learning and community engagement, and wanting to use my othered voice to understand what's happening. But I went in my research with my hypothesis was that as a practitioner from an othered space, from the Caribbean setting, that my experiences would be very different to persons from, say, a space such as the United States or Europe or Australia, where they have more resources, more funding, where there's a better understanding of what community engagement as a field means, what it's like to be a part of the research. So I wanted to look at my hypothesis being that, it's a completely different experience. My experience doesn't really look like that of those in spaces outside of my own. But I was quickly humbled, which is why I say self-reflection is a humbling experience. I was quickly humbled, and I learned that I am not alone in my perceptions and frustrations and trials and tribulations in being a practitioner in community engagement and service learning. What started off as my own personal journey and documenting that and looking at it in a critical setting and space led to seeing the larger field of research and the larger field of area as sort of a bouncing back and echoing, a resonating of what I experience and what others also experience. So it was me attempting to seek validity and triangulation that led to the emergence of Echo-Autoethnography. So in order to ensure the rigor of my research as a PhD scholar, I would have included semi-structured interviews in my research. So the use of the semi-structured interviews started off as just a comparison to show that, yes, this is my experience, but this is a different experience that happens outside of my setting and my understanding by other practitioners. But as I said, I was quickly humbled, and I was shown that my voice and my experiences, though it felt personal to me, resounded with others. And it was an understanding that in community engaged work, our voices are rarely in isolation. Within community engaged work, we share experiences across time, space, sociocultural places, geopolitical spaces. Community work is something that is a connecting of stories and threads and experiences that shape the wider happenings around the world. So in understanding Echo-Ethnography, I would have sat with the iterative reflection process, which is seen here in this, this illustration that I would have created as part of my research, where it is a cycle of reflection. So we we reflect and we reflect and we reflect. But what happened in my research, because it was an autoethnographic research, I sat with myself with my memos, my journals, guided introspection, my poems, my conversations that I would have shared with people over the years, and then connecting that to my interview participants through their prompted reflection. And that cycle of reflection where I connected myself to the participants led to a growing and a rolling of forever and forever continuity that led to echo-autoethnography. So the iterative reflection process led to what then became the echo-autoethnographic process. So defining autoethnography. So this is the definition that I came up with that I think best describes what echo-autoethnography means. It is the intentional engagement of the autoethnographic process with interviews, which corroborates the fundamental hypotheses of your research for the co-creation of knowledge. The co-creation of knowledge between the researcher and research participants. So what we see is a moving away from the extractive practices of research, where a researcher goes into a community, engages with the community, and takes the data out of the community and then creates research and shares it with the academic community. So what the echo-autoethnographic process looks at is that you yourself and the research participants are in the shared iterative reflection process. So the self, which would have been me in my research, would have spoken to the research participants. And unbeknownst to me, the research participants, they reflected or mirrored or echoed what I was saying. So it was a back and forth of the knowledge and understanding of what it was like to be a practitioner in the field of community engagement and service learning. Beyond my experience where my research led to this methodology, this research can be used in other hypotheses shaping what the community says is occurring and what the researcher thinks is occurring. So it's the understanding of the co-creation of knowledge. There's no one holder of knowledge, but knowledge is co-created between the participants within the community and the researcher themselves. So in understanding echo-autoethnography, we need to see that it is the allowing of the researcher to recognize their own biases and perceptions. Because what often happens as researchers in the field, we go into the communities thinking that we know what the problems are, what the issues are. We are academic persons. We think we know what's going on. We think we are there to give knowledge to the community to help them fix their problems. But in reality, echo-autoethnography allows us to sit with our biases and our perceptions about issues within the community and speak out into the space and hear the voices coming back to us. So it's not just us going and speaking, but it's the understanding that there is a reverberation of what we are saying and what we are doing. So the primary source of data, being the researcher, is a voice that is amplified. However, there is the crucial understanding that the community voice is also magnified and amplified in echo-autoethnography. The voices go between spaces and places. They bounce back across the space and time to each other. And we are understanding that the researcher is not the only source of known experience. The community also has known experience, and the utilization of both of these amplifies and leads to a space and a place where the research is built and shared and understood, and solutions are created to systemic issues within society. Engaging echo-autoethnography. as the speaker reverberates, the speakers being the community and the researcher, the data stands as a communal way of experiencing knowing and knowledge. Knowledge is communal. Knowledge is built through a community, and this is particularly seen in emerging societies, in societies where they're more traditional in terms of how they engage with and amongst the communities. So if there's that experience of knowing that is communal, it is shared. The researcher within a society that is emerging, who is born and bred within that society, is not separated from that society because they are now an academic or they have a PhD or they're doing their masters and all these different things in research, but rather they are a part of the community. So it's recognizing the researcher as an integral part of the community and sharing that communal knowledge with other community participants. Through amplifying voices, the participants speak into whatever the research void is, because there's the understanding that what we are doing and researching often comes with a void. When we go into communities, it should come with a void because we are articulating and understanding that we don't know everything. As researchers, we don't know, which is why we are doing research. We are doing research to know and to understand. So that is the void into which we are speaking to. And we are amplifying the voices of all participants, the community, the researchers, the different global, international elements within and practitioners within the space that they are all growing and amplifying together. The voices are able to reach across the space of diverse groups, and there's the understanding that no one group is the holder of all knowledge. There is indigenous knowledge, there's academic knowledge, there is traditional knowledge, there's knowledge that is universal, and knowledge should not be held within power structures. Knowledge is universal and communal, and Echo-Autoethnography acknowledges that communal understanding of knowledge and the communal growth of knowledge. So I come to the end of my presentation with this last slide. What is happening beyond the echo? What are we doing towards a more reflective future? So my hope and my understanding of what this methodology, this innovation in research in community engaged work looks at is that it represents an invitation for all of us to engage and reflect together. It is crucial that we not only engage, but that we reflect and that we allow the self-reflection process to humble us. The humility that comes with reflection is key to understanding our communities better and to coming up with solutions that can better hold space for everyone within our settings. It's not just about me, myself, the researcher, giving my knowledge and my understanding and utilizing my titles to fix a problem that is outside of me. No, it is an understanding that it is a reflection and a critical space where we need to sit with ourselves and we need to sit with the knowledge that we have and the knowledge that we think we have and to counter assumptions and perceptions. It is reimagining that research is this linear thing, but it is rather a resounding echo. It goes both ways. Research is not one-sided. Research goes both ways. And by realizing that the echoes exist across a wide range of spaces and places, that we could embrace these and use this to build community engaged practice. It is the strength and resonance of Echo. It still ties my tongue, even though I am the one that came up with it. Echo-Autoethnography. The resonance of it lies in the ability to reinforce the process of listening and engaging with the art of criticality, where reciprocity and co-creation reign. So it's beyond reciprocity. It is beyond just giving. but it is co-creation of knowledge, co-creation of systems to fix and to enhance the different challenges and to sort of magnify what is happening within society and what we can do, and how what we know as researchers and practitioners can connect with and embody and reinforce what the community already knows and already experiences. So thank you all very much for listening to my presentation. It's I hope it was one that sort of hits a nerve with people, that you can see yourself and understand how the work that we do, how the work that you may do in the future would really impact and engage with what we see and what we do as persons within our separate societies and our separate spaces. So thank you all very much. Here's my contact information. You can find me on LinkedIn, Dr. Shilohna Phillanders. And if you would like to get in touch for any type of collaboration, research, anything of that sort, here's my email address. And thank you all again for being a part of this presentation. And I look forward to engaging with you all in your own stories and your own recognition of your space and your positionality and how that can help in the work that you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Phillanders, for that brilliant and deeply reflective presentation. I think we can see all of the clapping hands, the party hats coming through. I would encourage people to send even more of those as I kind of conclude this part of the session now. Just this huge appreciation for what you're doing in this space. I'm going to offer just a few reflections on what you've shared, but before I do that, I'd like to encourage anyone who has questions or comments, please put these in the chat if you'd like to remember them there. But I'll also dive into a Q&A session now where people can put up their hands and verbalize any questions they have. I was struck by many things in this presentation. I was struck by the fact that you chose to center it on your methodology process. And I think that was such an important and powerful reminder of the ethics of our methods and the importance of leaning into the messiness of what this process is and recognizing how important that is. It also resonated for me, and I think probably for many others in this chat, that this was around centering the experiences of people coming from emerging contexts and trying to connect these two experiences around the world. I also love the honesty of it. Research and dissertation writing is so much a process of learning and unlearning and being humbled by others, but we very rarely recognize that. So I love that you gave us permission to do that in this conversation. But finally, I wanted to reflect that a lot of what you shared in terms of the surprising connections between people seem to resonate with organizations like the International Association for Research and Service Learning Community Engagement, or GivePulse, or Lead California, that seek to connect and learn from different contexts. So I'm left with some of your reflections on what is happening beyond the echo, of how important it is to reflect together and to allow the self-reflection process to humble us, and that when we pause to listen, we find reverberations and amplifications all around us. I am also getting tongue-tied on even easier words to pronounce. So with that said, I'm going to open for our Q&A. So please feel free to put any questions in the chat or to raise your hand if you have a question that you would like to verbalize.
Any questions? Feel free to ask anything. Yeah, Matthias, yeah.
Yes, so well, thank you so much. And yeah, so thank you for adding this methodological angle to the dissertation. My question is on the lines of the different kind of echoes that you experienced and how they resonated with you it's not necessarily a thing of volume, like some were like louder than others. Um, or how do you handle those different vibrations, if you want, like in like how to pay attention to the smallest one that maybe are not like so loud that it could be as equally important.
Okay. Thanks, Matthias. Yeah, that's a really good question. So in doing the research, in sitting with my data from the interviews, there were some things that, like you say, there are small echoes or reverberations and louder ones. And I think for me, the smaller ones, I think were probably more of the humbling experiences, because I think in doing the research, when I would have received feedback from, let's say, persons from North American settings, US settings, I really went in with the research thinking that there are certain things such as, for example, resource allocation. As a practitioner in service learning and community engagement, resource allocation is one that many of us in emerging societies are well aware resources are limited. I was a one-man show in my department where I was the sole person doing all the different hats that related to community engagement. And I often felt overlooked and very frustrated with that feeling of I'm doing so much and there's so little of anything that I can stretch. And one of the things that really, I think one of the echoes that really stood out to me, one of my not just one, actually all of my participants who were from North America and US settings in particular, all stated that they struggle with resources and they feel so behind in terms of what they should do and how much time, and they are managing this by themselves and they're an office of one or two people. And this felt to me like, but what do you mean? You're from this highly resource setting. You're from the United States. You all are come from some of these top universities and you have all these resources. And I think how I dealt with this and how I would say we all as practitioners utilizing this methodology, how we deal with this is by sitting with the information. It's really about reflecting and journaling and sitting with yourself with it, because when I first got those responses from my participants, I was like, are you sure? Are you sure this is how you feel about this? And I think, again, that was the humbling part of it for me, because I went in thinking that there's such an imbalance in what exists. And this imbalance means that my work in the field maybe is smaller or less than what's happening in larger settings. But it showcased that I needed to sit with myself. I needed to, on some level, chastise myself, because I realized that I had a strong bias about what community engagement and service learning looks like in North American settings. I had a strong bias going in, and it was a recognition of that bias. And I think that is what we need to continuously do as practitioners, understanding the bias and recognizing that it exists and sitting with it and fleshing it out. So I hope I answered that. I see Dan has a hand raised as well. Hi, Dan.
Hello, thank you so
Hi.
much for
Yeah.
your presentation and your work. I was really struck by the communal themes in your methodology around autoethnography. And I'm kind of contrasting it with what I imagine is more of a solitary process for traditional autoethnography. And I'm wondering, and you've kind of gotten into that a little bit, but just what you learned or what you feel like you learned differently by having that echo, as opposed to what you would not have captured had that echo not been there. It's kind of curious. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So, like I said, it really was, this emerged out of what I was doing because my work really was meant to be autoethnographic. It was supposed to be me sharing my story and using that to look at the practitioner experience. And that was it. That is what it was supposed to be about. It was supposed to be me using my years of experience. But then, as we are aware in research, and particularly in more arts-based narrative types of research, there calls for a greater need for validity and triangulation. You want to ensure that your work is not going to be put to the scrutiny of, or you're just journaling and pretending it's research, or you just wrote a story and you're pretending that it's something academic. So I think that was what it really was for me. I was just so it was really the pushing of Stacy, my mentor from ISLice, is not present today. I spoke to her earlier and she indicated she wouldn't be present. But it was discussions with Stacy, my mentor from ISLice, and my PhD advisor, Dr. Lauren Misiek, who also is not present today. They both were unavoidably not able to be here. It was me discussing with them, like, this is beyond me. I thought this was just me. And I literally sat with them over Zoom and in their office. And I'm like, how do I express that this is not just me telling my story? This is not just me, oh, I'm going to share what I did in a nice dissertation and wrap it up nicely. It really was, wait, this is a shared experience. This is something that is beyond me. This is supposedly a simple experience that is isolated to my little country of Trinidad and Tobago. But in speaking to participants, I had participants from the US, China, Latin America, including Chile, South Africa, other African contexts. So it was sort of an intercontinental research project. And what started off as just me using the interviews as triangulation to show that, this is rigorous academic research, it ended up being that, wait, this is something that crosses geographical borders. This is something that crosses sociopolitical borders. This is something that crosses economic borders. And it was sitting with that showed me that community is universal. That communal understanding of knowledge and experiences, especially in community-based and community-engaged research, it is universal. I think as practitioners, as students, as community members, we all think that what we experience is isolated to our own small setting. But through the echoes, it showed that that's not the case. And yes, we say that in passing, oh, we all experience X, Y, Z. But the research actually showcased that it is a universal experience. It is an echoing. It happens everywhere. The challenges, the systemic issues that we experience in the US, or I experience in Trinidad and Tobago, or someone experiences in Chile or Botswana or China, these things, they are, as Matthias would have spoken about, those large and smaller things. So we have certain experiences that are largely universal, but we do have experiences that are minute, but still universal. And it is the recognition of that led to this methodology. Thank you.
So we have a couple more minutes for one or two more questions. So if anyone has questions, please put them in the chat or feel free to raise your hand. We have a comment in the chat from Lucy Robinson. She says, I just wanted to say how insightful the presentation was, and has added Dr. Phillanders' 2025 article to her reading list. We have from Tim Stanton, dear Shilohna, thank you for this interesting, excellent presentation. I am so pleased to have heard you and will read the article. Congratulations on your PhD and good luck. I hope our paths cross soon. And I see Anisha Jordan has raised their hand, so I will hand over to Anisha to ask a question.
Thank you. I also wanted to say good job. I think this was excellent. I am looking forward to actually referring to this in some of my work as well. So I just want to say thank you very much for sharing your perspective as well, and continue the good job, the good work.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Are there any final burning questions before we slowly conclude?
Or I don't see any hands raised, but while I guess if anyone has any other questions, there's just something that I wanted to share about this research that I spoke to Claire about this recently when we were talking about my presentation, and I found the terminology for it. So it's called the death of the author. Death of the author is a literary theory that basically states that when an author does their work, they have a certain understanding or knowledge of what the work will be and what it would look like and what should be taken away from it. But when the work gets out into public spaces, it's almost as if the author, the writer themselves die in terms of they no longer exist, because the community, the readers, take out of and shape what they take away from the writing itself. And that is what happened with me with my dissertation. This was not, to me, one of the pivotal aspects of my research. This was a secondary element of my research dissertation, coming out of my findings and my contributions out of my research. This was quite small. I didn't think that echo-autoethnography would resonate with so many people. I joked with Claire and I said, I was somewhat disappointed that some areas of my research, my dissertation, didn't get the recognition that I thought it did. Because coming out of my dissertation, I also have a toolkit for research practitioners in the community, reflexive guides, a rubric, like many things that I thought would have been a lot more useful. But through the presentation of my research and discussing my research, and even my research panel, my dissertation panel, they were all very much zoned in on echo-autoethnography. And for me, I think it's one of the most surprising parts of my research. I didn't expect it to happen. And I guess it comes with the work that we do. Sometimes when we present, when we research, when we do stuff, we think that we are going in with the expectation of a certain outcome, but the outcome that we expected is not the takeaway that others get from it. And I think that in itself, for me, was a humbling experience, because I almost get like a bit agitated, because what do you mean that echo-autoethnography stands out more than my research rubric and my reflexive guidelines and my everything else that I did? But it really is a beautiful process to see that this work is just resonating with so many people. It really is a beautiful experience, and I look forward to sharing some more. I believe Claire would have shared a link. I have a publication on a summary of my research itself, and I also have a forthcoming book chapter on this particular area of research, and going more in depth into what it is about, how it came about, and how it can be utilized. So I'm looking forward to that work being put out there, since that is the work that is reaching people more. I look forward to you all hopefully in the next few months reading it and having this work out there where more people can engage with it. So thank you so much again, everyone, for your time and for your allowing me into your spaces.
Thank you so much, Dr. Phillanders, for your thoughtful presentation and for prompting deep thinking amongst us about how we do community engaged research and sometimes the unexpected resonances our dissertations have beyond what we think they will. This concludes our moderated Q&A session. We still have another 30 minutes for a deeper discussion, a more informal discussion amongst those who would like to stay, but we also understand that you may not all be able to stay on for this. Before we wrap up this part, just a few reminders. So the first thing was, as mentioned at the beginning, this is a recorded webinar and it will be accessible quite soon on the Lead California YouTube channel, generally within a week, and we will send the link to all registrants when it's available. There will also be a follow-up email from GivePulse with a link for a dissertation dish evaluation. And our next dissertation dish webinar will be by Dr. Caitlin Ferrarini on examining the potential of online community-based learning to foster global citizenship capacities in college students. And it will take place on the 7th of October at, in fact, the same time as this one, so from 1 to 2:30 p.m. Central Time. And I have put a link to our next dissertation dish in the chat for anyone who would like to register. As we conclude, I want to give a final thank you to Dr. Phillanders, as well as to the Dissertation Dish Planning Committee, especially Tiffany from GivePulse, who made this technically possible for all of us. And thank you all again for being here today. And I hope you enjoy your mornings, your evenings, your afternoons, wherever you are in the world. This concludes the formal section of our dissertation dish.